because there is like one private
So we have to deal with
so
well, and I too, one of the things that we have to look at is West Side Wall Street. I know that the residents are interested in coming to us, so I'm going to go give them another nudge.
Yeah, that is awesome.
And say,
like
He was down in our neck of the woods.
something like, you know how you guys redid, Virginia
Area,
Canyon?
like, or he did.
They would like to
They
do
got a
something like that because they are
$500,000
worried about their road.
roadway improvements.
And it's a legitimate concern.
Yeah,
Is that gonna be part of the beltway?
East side.
I don't think so. I think it's on 93.
I know, that's pretty.
I think we don't talk about the beltway anymore.
Oh,
What's your position on the beltway?
that thing
Well, I would
is
prefer not to.
enormous.
Neighborhood,
The whole reason we didn't buy over there is
Would you
because of that.
agree?
Yeah.
building.
The other neighborhood closest though has to tear down houses.
Thanks, sir.
No way you could possibly get it.
Start doing now for forget.
Like what our grades are.
So what is a Band-Aid that they work for that? Like, that's really what we need to, I mean, there's no, you can't relocate that wall. And you can't go into the property that's further used,
To do like a crowd.
because it's either the one with the two purple houses or Habitat property. So.
All right, Mayor, we're ready whenever
I think
everybody
we're
gets here and
gonna-
everything's ready to go.
I'll give it one more minute. We'll start right at 5:30.
No.
Rising.
Oh, yeah, I did. Sorry, I don't know what you said.
Well, I probably.
Yeah, I did. I got a couple really good ones. I actually got a really good
Just two of them, and I was gonna make a reservation for them
pork
at
skirt.
the Brazilian Steakhouse. Fogo
Like that,
de,
huh?
Yeah, I went up a little.
whatever it is, we've been there before.
I'll go to chow.
Fogo de Chao.
Sorry, love that place.
Oh my God, you end up with like the meat sweats, but.
That's farther than I actually thought it was.
The meat is so good. And she said she didn't wanna go. And I was like-
I'll just run.
Okay.
There's probably one.
They're gonna grab something in between prom and after prom. She just wants to grab something.
I would like to say happy tax day and welcome everybody to the April 15th, 2024 Idaho Springs City Work Session. Happily, we only have two items on this work session, both very important. And we are going to start off with Clark Creek Fire Authority organizational assessment. And Chief Kelly is here with us today. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for giving me time to answer your questions.
All right. We had a really good recommendation breakout. I know copies were on the counter there for at least a few weeks. I have been through it at least a few times. And, there's lots of good things in here. And one thing I would like to make everybody aware of, there is Senate Bill 24-194 making its way through the approval process. And this would give fire districts taxing authority, which currently they don't have. And I have just said my personal opinion. We only pay about 1/3 of what other foothill fire districts, would pay in similar locations. We're, like around the 4.5 mils, and you'll find other areas more like 13, 14, even higher than that. we've dodged a bullet. And part of the problem is that the recommendation that we had in this was that we find a way to have some tap into some taxing authority, because currently I think we don't get to where we need to get on mills alone. It would just be too painful. So I personally am hoping that 24-194 is approved, and unfortunately, I think it's probably going to be at least a few more months. But I wanted you to know that I feel that's good news in the choice department. Choices are always good. And we don't necessarily have to have an ESD, for example, where we give up our representation just so that we gain the ability to have a sales tax. And Kelly, I'd really like to know your views on that, if you've had a chance to look at 24-194.
Well, I was at the state fire chiefs meeting Monday. I think it was Monday. No, it wasn't Monday. But anyway, a few days ago, my brain works that way. They were talking about that state bill, and it will only give that sales tax authority to a Title 32 district. So it won't give that to the emergency services district. But that's okay. It's still something that we need throughout the state, because there are small departments throughout the state that are very affected by the property evaluation thing that's going back and forth. So that would be a good thing that would kind of make it good for everybody in general. I asked our attorney, Bob Cole, for an opinion on sales tax for fire protection. And as it sits right now, the municipalities could initiate a sales tax for fire protection, and the county can do it countywide. It takes a ballot question, but you don't have to be under a district or anything to do that. So if we all came to an agreement that we would like to do a state or a county fire tax to get more money from our visitors and take a little bit of the load off, we could do that.
And I'm just playing devil's advocate, but that isn't such a bad way to go. I personally feel that the citizens of Idaho Springs realize the danger that we're in, being grossly underfunded. However, we may find another municipality may say, for example, we can't afford that or go that high. And so what you might have the county at one level and other cities or towns at a slightly different level. But to be fair, their protection may also be at a different level. I'll give a great example would be Idaho Springs. Maybe we have staffing and there's somebody at the old firehouse, 4 folks in there with the ability to overnight. And you may have an empire, for example, that maybe only has one person, staying there, or essentially nobody is another possibility. But I'm just saying, you could have different levels of protection and different, funding levels. I guess I'm saying so.
Yeah, and it really wouldn't make sense for the municipalities to do their individuals and then the county to do one. And it would be best for just to have one across the county. But if that weren't to work out, the 4 municipalities could group together and do a municipal sales tax and fund, whatever may come of all of this. So to go backwards a long ways, the current emergency services district was formed as a revenue instrument, not as a fire department. So that was put together to take the financial load off of Idaho Springs and Georgetown specifically, that were providing protection to all of the unincorporated area as well. So it was underfunded to begin with, but the plan was that over time you could work that out and increase that.
I use her.
Good, good. So that funding mechanism turned into, let's just put the fire departments under the county, which is what we did under the ESD. And we did that for 10 years. It didn't work for many different reasons. And then we started the fire authority out of that. So that's some funding information there.
And then along with the funding information, I only learned of 24, 194 just the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And I did notice that even taxing authority is only with voter approval
Yes.
on that. And your attorney has suggested that basically the same thing could be accomplished, albeit a vote with county going one way, different municipalities would also have to vote for a sales tax implementation.
Yeah, if you were to do, let's say we were to do a county sales tax for fire protection of 0.5% or whatever, the number that gets developed if we were to go that way. It would be a ballot question for all of the county residents. And they could even, essentially send money to Evergreen as well, if they needed to do that. So, which could take pressure off of everybody's mill levies.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's something that really should be looked at closely. And with the tight time frame we have of taking care of this and turning it all whatever direction, there's no way to look at that closely and see what those numbers would be. And plus there's 3 other initiatives currently for possibility of being on the ballot is lodging tax for
Oh, yeah.
short-term rentals.
Yep, I did see that.
Property tax revenue growth limit. There's 2 of those working to go on the ballot. So until we see the results of the election, there's no way to really look at how that's going to affect revenues and the numbers that we should be looking at. So there again, that brings me in my position back to renew the IGA, back off of the compressed time table to decide what's going to go on, and have some serious discussion over the next year after that, and come up with the financing when you know what these growth limits pass. Because if they do, that's really going to change the look of the finance.
Right.
And also, there again, I think the 2 new commissioners that are going to come in for the next 4 years, starting in January, they should be part of that decision. That's just me. I'm just a fire chief.
What are your thoughts on, because when you mention the other initiatives that are on there, it makes me nervous because I know of a lot of entities within the county that are looking at turning to the taxpayers for mill levies, tax increases, like our funding within this county for a lot of our entities. We're finally hitting a point where everybody's going, wow, I guess we have to do something different, because there's no more ignoring the fact that our funding has shifted. What are your ideas for if this does not go in the way that you would like it to?
Well, it depends on what that direction is. There's a lot of scenarios there. Just to kind of give you a little bit on that, I asked for that mill levy increase on the ESD, which would be a ballot question for the unincorporated area. I asked for that 3 years ago, and it was turned down. So, because they wanted this evaluation to be done before they made any decisions.
It's really kicked us in the teeth, hasn't it?
Yeah. So, you know, a Title 32. Let's say the group decides, well, we got to do a Title 32. That's 2 ballot questions, one to form the district and one to set the mill levy. And if either of those fail, your effort for the Title 32 fails. From the day you decide to do a Title 32 exercise, it can take up to 3, maybe even 4 years to get that done before you start doing business as a Title 32 district.
And not to muddy the waters, but I would assume that if you were going to the voters on that, there would also be the question of levying sales tax with Title 32 if the
If that
SB
passes,
24-194
you
passes.
could have
Yeah.
a third question there to go, you know, partner with your mill levy, because starting a Title 32 district would be, to do it correctly would be at least 15 mills and possibly more.
Oh, God.
So that would be a brand new property tax on every property owner in the county, or within our jurisdiction of that Title 32 district.
I would guess the only way to make that palatable would be not to go 15, but adopt a sales tax and let folks know that we're doing the sales tax. So maybe we go to, I'm making a number up, but 9 mills and 0.4 cent sales tax.
Yeah.
You know, to get where we need what 15 or 16 would have brought in.
Are we
Yeah.
at 4, am I correct, we're at 4.65 in Mills now?
4.5.
4.5, okay.
So to get those numbers though, you would have to know, we'd have to have somebody sit down with what the revenue would be based on the sales and how much you could generate with different percentages on that. And then look at how that would compare to the mill levy that you would need for your operation. And that's quite a bit to go along with that Title 32. But really, to do a new IGA, one direction or the other, you also need to know those sales tax revenues that are potential to go along with setting the IGA numbers. And then the recommendations from that study suggest that the ESD should pay a lower amount than the municipalities. So there's 2 things there. That really, there's no way you can look at what those numbers look like until after the election and sit down and have some work sessions or have some staff people at some level to look at that to make an informed decision for what direction to go with everything. And I'm not supposed to be here to influence you, I was told, so.
Oh,
Not
well,
by my board, but
well, so far I feel that we're getting direct answers as I can to the best of your ability.
Is the IGA something that could be renewed for like a year?
there's a clause in there that if 4 parties of the 5, so there's the 4 municipalities in the district, if 4 of those 5 parties request that the current IGA can be extended for 2 one-year periods, it's already written into the current IGA, but all 5 parties have to sign that. And Mr. Wood said at the last meeting that he would not sign. So at some point, there's gonna have to be, this is what we want. How's
So-
this gonna work?
If the IGA is not continued, and like, what happens?
If it expires December 31st, then the fire authority does not exist. All of the assets will have to be distributed to the parties based on mediation and the percentage of the contribution to the fire authority over the 23-year period. So then you essentially go back to your volunteer fire departments, which there's not very many volunteers in the county anymore.
That wouldn't work today, for sure.
Yeah.
So there's a 2/3 vote currently counting on this, then, right?
Well, my personal opinion is they're digging in because they want to take control over it and bring it under the county. So,
And alleviate the fire authority.
yeah, the fire authority would go away and it would be totally rearranged under the county government. There would be a new fire chief. And they would have to know ahead of time and get quotes on insurance for covering the operation, which would come under their umbrella. So they would just add that. You've got health insurance.
So basically,
That's there.
everything the fire authorities work for
Yeah,
up to today would be just gone.
yeah, it'd be gone.
Well,
And then we'd leave it up to the county to, or 3 or 4 members of the commissioners to make the decisions that you and Jeremy and.
They would, yeah, I don't have all kinds of thoughts on what they would do, but the county manager would be
He'd be the fire chief,
essentially,
and he's never seen a fire.
unless he appoints Jeremy to that.
And I'm just saying that the CIT study, their recommendation is that we go with an emergency service district and of
That's
course,
That's the current thing that they are
Yeah.
the board of directors of.
right, and they did point out that that would be under county management at that point, and then everyone else currently that has a seat at the table, Silver Plume, Georgetown, Idaho Springs, and Par, for example, would be part of a committee, advisory committee.
It would have no
Right,
power.
right,
Yeah,
right.
well, Lisa's got some.
Well, no, actually, I have a question, because I haven't lived in the county when we didn't have the CCFA. Like, can I get from some of you folks who've lived here longer, your thought process, if you're willing to share on, okay,
I think
bad
that-
words.
Yeah, I think
What, how
that's,
you feel about moving this to a county,
no.
you know, versus keeping it a separate fire authority?
Well, I think it's appropriate where it is now, because,
If you want to, if you don't have to give an opinion, like,
well, I think these guys know what they're doing well above what any commissioners or us or as a body or anybody else knows what's going on.
you know, I'm not an expert in, you know,
No,
fire mitigation.
and neither am I, which is why I'm saying this is why we have them. So there, you know, there's so much that these guys do know and perform over and above, I think all of us could even imagine, even, you know, our great chief of police over there that, you know, I mean, let's try to do his job.
No, thank you.
Exactly. So there's no, you can't compare anybody to what these fellows do, I think. And as an authority, I think it's appropriate to have them and what they do discuss and perform well over what we all know. But, you know,
When,
I don't think anybody has any business.
When does the current agreement expire?
December
December
31.
31.
And when would be the proposed date of this vote, if they're gonna have a vote?
there's,
Will it be on this
It's not.
ballot or?
No, there's no discussion of that yet because we're doing the joint meetings.
Well, gotcha, okay.
And we'll have a facilitator at the next one on Thursday, the 25th. And he'll try and keep
Of this
things
month.
civil and, yeah, and moving forward so they can look at. And I talked with him today and his impression of what he was hired to do was to facilitate the meetings to look at the Title 32, the existing fire authority, and the move under the county umbrella is what I call it, because the county
So the
commissioners
ESC
are the
would be
board of
under the
directors,
umbrella?
well, under the county administration.
Why the discrepancy though, chief?
What's that?
Why the discrepancy of what's changed to why they want to abolish what?
The evaluators, the consultants that did the study are two retired fire chiefs from back east that worked under a county system.
Well, back
They were
east,
county
so,
fire departments, so they come back.
which were probably 10,000 times bigger than ours, and
Yeah, they're bigger, so they came from a system that they were familiar with and probably worked very well there where they were at. And that wasn't part of the scope of the evaluation, as to look at the governance of the current organization and a Title 32, what that would look like. There was nothing in there that said explore bringing this in under the county, under the existing emergency services district.
Would it also be fair to say that they were probably leaning that way, to put it under the county umbrella, because there would be sales tax, ability?
Well, yeah, part of that, and I know something else, I was on their website and there's a page here, and I left my pile that I copied to bring here, but they were suggesting they were doing a strategic plan rather than a agency evaluation. So I'm not sure all of that stuff in there, but I think that based on what they worked with and what they were familiar with, made sense to them because there's already a district in existence that is under the county administration that they think could be a seamless move, which I don't see it being a seamless move.
so an inspiration or expectation of former chiefs, et cetera, with 30 years experience would come here to try to achieve just that, where maybe everything didn't fit, with us, with, geographically or population size, et cetera. But they have it set in their mind that, well, this is the way it was there, so it's gotta work here, or something.
Possibly.
Well, I lived in Baltimore County, and Baltimore County is Baltimore County Fire Department, Ann Arbor County. It's completely different
It's very
Jump.
typical back east.
than what we deal with here. Do all of the municipalities have to be unanimous in their agreement? Like, do all the members have to be unanimous? You said that Mr. Wood would not sign it, but if it's a 2-to-1 vote.
Well, it's
Is it a
2/3,
majority or
yeah.
unanimous?
Yeah, is it a majority or unanimous?
Or, yeah,
You say they're the board of directors of the fire authority, isn't it?
but no, there's a different board for the authority, right, Kelly? Is there?
Yeah, we have an appointed board right now. Mike is a member.
I'm your representative.
Yep.
He's a rep, and John Curtis.
I know that guy.
Georgetown has 2 people, Empire has 1, Silverton has 1, and the Emergency Services District has 2.
So how many votes is that total?
Well,
That's 5 votes.
it's one vote per party to
Per,
Yeah,
like per,
So Idaho Springs, this is one thing I will say before I speak quietly, this whole conversation kind of continues, but Idaho Springs has a vote,
your
county commissioners
Gulch,
have a vote, Georgetown has a vote, Empire has a vote.
your Gulch, Jeremy?
No, that's ESD.
Yeah, so that's.
So
that's on
there's
corporate.
five yea or nays that have to go in the agreement that was parties to the IGA.
Right.
But, I mean, that's generated by a majority
Yeah,
vote of the individual, or like whether it's boards or it's commissioners or.
sure. No matter who serves on that board
Right.
or how many people, it's a yea or nay.
It's a agency, it's a, like
Okay.
me as Idaho Springs would have to vote to sign the IG or sign whatever the agreement is or not.
And then our
And then-
representatives would do what we ask them to do? or-
No, essentially it takes the board of the fire authority out of it.
So,
The IGA or any agreement.
but does it have to be unanimous, like? if-
No, it just has
If
to be.
five of us said
majority.
yes and two of us said no,
So it's
Idaho
majority.
Springs would still be voting to go ahead and do whatever it is we're voting to
It
do.
takes-
Just normal rules,
Yeah.
majority.
But to renew the IGA, it will take, it has to be agreed upon by all five parties to the IGA.
Including the commissioners.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if the commissions are 2-1, like that's where I'm struggling.
That's what I was just gonna ask, Lisa, you're right.
If the commissions are a 2-1 vote, and I don't know if they are, but if they're a 2-1 vote, one can be totally against it, and that's totally
But
fine.
that's still
If they don't-
majority though.
Majority rules.
So they would rule, right, correct?
Yeah.
I'll tell you why I'm asking all the questions, because I don't like any time that there's any rush to redo a whole new thing, like that makes me really
And that being
anxious.
said, how could you not renew it if you don't?
Just
have
for a year, man,
well,
like-
yeah, without a well laid out plan?
Well,
I think
sure,
the idea is
it's
to
not-
keep the pressure on.
You're not gonna be seamless if you don't have a plan.
Yeah, there's no seamlessness at
Doesn't
all.
sound like there's much of a plan.
Well, and 90% of us in this room have we've all lived under just what Kelly said, what it would go to of a volunteer style thing or service that we would all live under
Well,
again.
no, it wouldn't, they're assuming the existing organization would come in under them and keep operating without any changes, other than my position, because they want me to go away.
Well, that would just suck.
And that's okay,
But that
because
doesn't ever work.
Jeremy's, he's ready to take my position, and I'm close to retiring, but to assume that the current organization would come in under their direction and start or continue to do business without any interruption that's just not.
It's not realistic.
Well, that's
It's not
mayhem.
sensible.
Yeah, I'm with Lisa, it takes some time to get the.
Just organizationally, organizations don't transfer that way.
Well,
This rush makes me nervous, and I'm very much in agreement with you. If you threw something on the ballot right now, it would fail.
Yeah.
People have taxing
Right.
and mill levy and budget fatigue. That's what I hear.
the organization, what it's taken to get us to where we're at currently is a milestone in and of itself, where we don't have, we have some sort of authority, i.e. Kelly, Jeremy, and, some direction with, the other being on the fire department. I work with these guys all the time, and just the advancements that we all experience, in real time, in real life, is way better than 25 years ago. I can tell you that right now.
See, and that's
When
what
I
I
was
was
a
kind of
puppy.
asking, like, you guys that have lived here a long time, like,
Yeah,
what has
yeah,
your experience been?
that's what I'm saying.
Because I haven't been here that long.
Right, that's what I'm saying, there's, for something like that to change overnight and
It won't.
go an or a different
Well, God
direction would
forbid
be
you don't
crazy.
want the event to happen.
January
middle of
1st,
a
2025,
yeah,
after
when the
everything.
transition is
Right.
happening and
Exactly.
it's not
Exactly.
seamless and
No,
So,
lost lives or worse,
and
We,
that's just it.
the current IGA was done and the one prior to it was allowed to lapse for 3 days, and we didn't exist legally for 3 days.
Oh,
Oh
wow.
my God, that's like a
Yeah,
And we
struggling
didn't-
down.
Probably
We didn't
no
know.
insurance, no.
Once I
nothing.
figured it out, I sent out an inflammatory email to the powers that be up there, and that's part of why they don't like me, but I stood us down. We had no authority to respond to an incident. And by doing that on the radio, the sheriff got wind of it and he called the commissioners and it only took 3 hours to get that signed at that point.
All it takes is one bad trash fire.
Which I had offered to drive that around. When it was finally agreed on that final form, I offered to drive it around for the signature.
So it was
which I had
done that day, yeah.
It would have been done. And that wouldn't have been a problem, but
Feel like losing the police force for 3 days.
yeah,
It's
We
just as
still-
important.
you know. We still would have responded to something.
Catastrophic
We just-
or whatever, but
Hopefully nothing goes wrong so that we don't put ourselves and our families on the line for dealing with something that was let to go, so.
that's inexcusable.
So there's to renew, the easiest thing, again, this is just me talking. The easiest thing to do is to renew the current IGA. Let that be in place and then start having meetings about the finance. Well, you can't do the finance until after the election. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, for
That makes
reasons that
sense.
we outlined, yeah.
Yeah, and you can't make an informed decision for your community without knowing what the results of that election is gonna be.
It also makes
Whatever direction you decide to go.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I was at the meeting, I don't know, last month now, and I guess the way they left it there was like, yeah, trying to put a plan together before the expiration. It sounds like they got a facilitator. Has anything else
Yeah, it's not,
happened?
well, maybe with a mediator, but based on the history with renewing the IGAs over time, it takes months to do it.
Mhm.
And they're gonna insist that they want control of the fire operation, so they're gonna insist that it goes in under the county. And that's gonna be the bump in the road that has to be worked out to get a new IGA written and agreed upon, be it with the fire authority or under the county administration.
You think that's a tough task, Chief?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't see that as being that difficult, but
What is the temperature of the
I
other
don't know.
municipalities? You said,
I don't
I know,
know.
because the last time you were here, you said you were on your greatest hits tour, like hitting all of us.
Not knowing where this council sits, I'm pretty confident that the other 3 municipalities are ready to submit the letter, which the fire authority board submitted a letter at that last joint meeting suggesting that we need to renew the IGA. So I'm pretty confident, like 99%, that the other 3 would submit that letter requesting to renew the IGA.
so where's your biggest fight then, Chief, with the commissioners then, or?
Yeah, they have said essentially that they don't want to sign the current IGA. They want to negotiate a new one. And
With the county taking over?
either, and that could be, they didn't say specifically not with the fire authority, but the energy is they want it under their direction.
8 months is not enough time to hammer that out, though.
There's no
Like,
way.
that is not, that does not allow for a seamless transition.
No, and it needs to be done before the holiday season.
So 7 months,
Well,
6.
Because it's,
What's
we
the
went way too long
communication
last time.
between the county and the fire authority like right now? Is it open or is it like no communication going on or?
Well, it's contentious because I've been standing up to them.
So are they just turning their back and not communicating with you? I mean, there's no open communication? Because
Very little.
Forgive me for,
I'm not trying to.
for getting in this, but I'm just saying, I think contentious is probably very accurate. But certainly there's been more communication, just because we've upped the meetings
Yeah,
you know, to try to hammer some of this out.
but that's between the parties,
Well, which
and
could
I'm not
go,
a party to the agreement, so,
which go two ways for
yeah.
chief.
I mean,
Now, we have George as a fire authority board member, so there's communication,
And a commissioner,
but where it goes from there, we don't know. And,
it's not a conflict of interest.
No,
no,
because John Curtis is our fire authority, he was our fire authority board member.
to
and he was
me,
on-
that's key. Communication is
yeah.
key to whichever direction this heads.
I
It's
would
gonna
like to
have
see,
to have a fair amount of communication to get it done.
I would like to see us keep what we have while we try to find a better way forward. Like, again, I come back to that, I don't like this rushing to something like 6 to 8 months to get a whole new
Yeah.
organizational structure makes me itchy.
And Lisa, you know, just to go along with a better way, as we were talking at the beginning of the meeting, some of this will depend on new legislation,
Yes,
you know, because really, the voters are gonna look at their purses and wallets.
Yep.
Right? And decide, level of protection versus what I can afford in my house kind of mentality, you know, so, you know, I think this, SB 24 94 and, lodging and, you know, a couple other things are, it's a little difficult, you know, without knowing how that's gonna come down.
oh, I think trying to throw anything else onto our county ballot this year is gonna be very challenging, it's gonna be a huge uphill battle. I would be in favor of continuing the IGA, like, I don't know if that helps, you know, I don't know, like, I don't feel like there's a good solution out here that will get us past that December 31st.
And I mean, maybe we have more knowledge in 3 months. But then, you know, we're late in the year to try to get some kind of a
Yeah.
voter approval on that.
Yeah.
Or they like work out the details. When you're rushing, details get forgotten, and then that comes back and bites you a year or two down the road because you didn't address that.
and they aren't going to be able to produce anything to make it sound like, oh, that's a great idea, we should just go over there. Because it doesn't exist.
I want to know, like, how, if the county is really into, let's bring this into the county, how do they see that transition working? Like, where are the rollers that slide the CCFA into county ESD? Like, how do you slide that over and make that nice and
Seamless.
well, not even seamless, but not a continuous migraine, like, it doesn't have to be seamless, it just can't be a
Well,
3-month migraine.
how long are the decisions gonna be sitting in the seat anyway?
And then there's a
Left
question,
over.
there's a lot of questions to answer there. And a big one is the pension of our existing staff.
Yeah, nobody touched on that. Exactly.
They've pushed back on that.
Yeah, well, that's,
I think Mike should be part of the discussion.
and that's a huge reason as to why we
He's got a
have.
lot of history with what we're doing and,
Well, and pensions and different things are a huge reason why, you know, our fire authority is such a success.
yeah,
And so reliable, dependable and good, and the equipment and their knowledge and everything else.
there's one more thing that hasn't been put on the table is we have just under $5 million reserve fund that
Yeah,
what's gonna be done with that? That's a lot of money.
A lot of money, and if we dissolve it at, you know, midnight or 11:59 of 12/31/24.
It's still there in the bank. but it
and where does
gets-
that go?
It gets
For
distributed,
real, that,
but
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
that
That's
distribution of the assets will take months or a year or better. Because you're gonna have to have a mediator get in there.
And more expensive.
Would it be possible to continue the IGA with the determination that within the 2 years, there will be a new plan, like all 5 parties could commit to, there will be a new agreement, full stop. We know what it is,
Yeah, because I feel like that one meeting I was in, like, whatever commissioners was just like, without the pressure, they're worried, like nothing. I don't know what I'm representing, but the feeling I got from them was
No,
just
I think
like
you're paraphrasing it pretty well.
wanting the like pressure, or like, how do we actually make sure that we sit down and all look at this and discuss and look at this value, you know, and like, they're using the current situation and the pressure to do that.
Well, and that's accurate, that's
Yeah.
actually an accurate technique, but it doesn't tell, like, I don't see, again, how do we slide it in if that's what they're gonna do? And what do they do at, 12:01, 1:20, 1:01, 25,
They're not.
And we love Mike, and I am just proud as heck that he represents, one of our representatives on the fire authority, and if anything comes to mind, please chime in, you're more than welcome, we really value your opinion.
Yeah,
I think,
it's right here.
it's too scary. I think what everybody reason over is that the fire authorities needs money. And I think that's the number one thing. I think this governance is number two. I believe some other people believe that you need to figure out the government before the money. But the fact is, we're spending that $5 million right now to keep the doors operating as said. We've had discussions before. I don't think we need to push the panic button on the IGA is not going to be renewed for another couple months. I think if you talk about the three options or discuss them in those meetings with the commissioners and say, what does that actually look like if we go under the county? All these different options. I think that come August, September, and it's still being talked about, I think then it's like, time out. We're not talking about this anymore until we figure out next year. So I think there's
That's
time. I know these guys aren't just gonna turn off the radio at midnight and let things go. There'll be something for sure. And I think that as that time crunch gets closer, the commissioners or whoever's not on board with the IGA will be forced to do something. Otherwise, we won't have a fire department. So, right. The three options are the Title 32, which Kelly's gonna hit me. I think is the best way to go, but it is probably also the most impractical because just for me, at my mill rate at my house, it's going to be a $300 increase in my taxes because Idaho Springs, like many of the other cities, the city is paying for my taxes to go to the fire department. I don't see them, right? And I don't think the cities are going to be like, yeah, we're going to go ahead and reduce our tax by 12 mils or whatever it is, so that you don't see a net increase in your taxes. That's probably the biggest thing. The other thing is it's more than the three different things. It's actually seating a board as well on that for initial election. So it's like 5 to 7 different yeses you have to get on a ballot. And I don't really think that's practical, but from a sense of cleanliness and operations, it makes its own government. So it doesn't really have political influence, which is nice. If I was sitting in the chief's chair, you only answer your board. We make fire department. It's very easy and clean. We're not fighting for police money. We're not fighting for road and bridge money, all that sort of thing. The third one's the obvious one you've already talked about is the current IGA. I imagine that the parties would want a different document than the one that we currently have, which would take negotiations and back and forth. The one that goes under the county, I think it's possible, but like you've already identified, there's a lot of questions. Like,
Yes.
Does the county want to run a fire department? Do they need another 30 employees to manage? I really don't think there's a huge savings in that. I mean, they might say, oh, well, we have our HR, we have our this and that. I don't think it's that big of a savings. It's certainly not glaring. They've been doing all the functions of that with Maria and chiefs that the county has. From an employee standpoint, going underneath the county would be a little weird because now you can't have things that you used to be able to come to a board meeting and we all vote raises and I get a raise. You're a county employee. So if we give the firefighters a pension match that's 12%, we would have to give all the employees in the county 12%. They don't want those differences. So it'd be a little bit tighter as a firefighter if I was to be with them. The other thing, I think it's possible in that IGA that you'd have to sign with the county to become the fire department underneath the county. I would highly advise that if it goes that route, that you make sure that the advisory board is more than that. It needs to be in charge of that department, not the county commissioners have the final say. Whatever that language is, it needs to be similar to the fire authority where the chief answers to one board, not a board that really thinks they should do something and then the parents come down and just blow it all up. And it negates the whole reason of a board if you're gonna have an advisory board that doesn't have any power. So that's my 2 cents. And
Let
it's up
me
to-
ask, not to put you on the spot, sure, perfectly all right if you haven't, because it's pretty early, but have you had a chance to review that SB 24-194?
I have not,
Okay,
but I think that might be jumping the gun, even if Title 32 has the ability to raise its own sales tax, you'd have to be a Title 32 district to use that.
right,
I mean, the steps to be able to use that, I mean, we already have avenues to get the sales tax. Like Chief was saying, the city could raise one, or you could do a countywide one. So we have that tap available. And unlike this study, that tap is available. If you did a countywide, it's possible to IGA into the fire authority. It's possible to earmark it to go to the ESD or whatever you come up with. So we don't really need to become a Title 32 district to access sales tax. So whether they vote yes or no on it's kind of a moot point. What I would really caution against is anything that's so divisive that you break apart the fire departments and try to go back to the way it was. Idaho Springs can't afford what they would need for a fire department. Georgetown can't afford it. The county can't afford it alone. Everybody needs to do this together. And it's an expensive, dangerous, hopefully never used thing. But no one can go at it alone. We gotta stick together no matter what.
That's what came out of the last county meeting that I went to when I looked at the cost of everything that was being discussed, like not one of us can afford that. None of us can.
No, and if you go through that study, all I heard was the sound of the old cash registers. They were like, you need physicals for all your firefighters every year. Cha-ching. You need to put exhaust systems and make sure your fleet's updated. It's just money, 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 money. And we're already losing money with what we're struggling to hold on to right now. So all that stuff is correct and industry standard and nice, but it's going to cost even more money than we're talking about. So
yeah, some of that, the physicals were like 500 to 900 per individual, about $20,000 per vehicle on the exhaust. And Chief did a pretty good job, I felt, recently telling us that, you look at the wear and tear on our equipment, with a couple exceptions, and the stuff's in pretty good shape.
yeah, I think so too. I think he's right on that. They're doing pretty good on the maintenance, and those 9 trucks, 7, 9 trucks they have are being rotated, so they'll last a while. I think they were just taking the safe path as a recommendation body and going with NFPA. And of course, NFPA is driven by the fire truck industry, so they put this standards in so that they can sell more fire
It's like
trucks.
mattress
There's a
test.
little of that, but like the trucks I have at work, we have airbags in them now, and there's some safety features that are good. I'm not discounting that, but it's certainly not replace $7 million worth of vehicles just so you can get the key fob entry. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not that much better, So.
And another really great talent who's being very quiet is Jeremy, and I hate to put you on the spot, but I really value your opinion. I know council does as well. I'd just like to hear your thoughts on this.
I don't know, I'm trying to avoid somebody claiming there's a conflict, so that's my issue right now. Between my full-time employment and my positions here, but
Well, we're glad to have you, and whatever you're comfortable saying is fine.
I'm with Mike. I did a capital plan projection. It's done. If we replace the trucks per the study, it's $10.2 million.
Wow.
Just to put it in perspective, I think we need to understand what that perspective is. And that doesn't count the other investment, which I'm still working on from a costing, staffing costs, what that looks like over the next 3 to 5 years. And you start adding long-term costs, it's kind of astronomical. And we are in a situation right now where we're currently trying to expand services to I think agreed upon levels, which is good, and then be able to maintain those over the next, 3 to 5 years as we work through this process. So if we can start implementing stuff within the study beyond what we've currently done to date, it becomes a 2 to 3 year process that we're talking about not having a revenue stream that's viable and research for that. So that's kind of why this becomes urgent, whatever this looks like in the next, probably 18 months. I'm being pretty conservative. I think that 18 months to get this figured out and have a path forward. I don't think it's a 7 or 8 month project. From previous experience with stuff like this, if in 18 months everybody agrees on the path and the steps, and I think that's pretty fair. So it kind of puts us in an interesting position. Do I think that there's an argument for pressure, keeping pressure on the group to continue to meet because the IGA is not being signed? Yeah, I guess to a certain point, that's kind of a bully negotiating tactic, historically, in my professional opinion. Being on the other side of that, withholding a contract in an effort to get whatever you want out of that process, usually degrades the process to a certain percentage. Like it's not as effective, you don't get as much consensus out of the deal. The end product isn't as good as maybe it could have been if it wasn't I'm gonna beat you up on the playground and take your lunch money if you don't agree that playing baseball on Thursdays is important. So I think that's at risk at this point with this process moving forward. I think meeting every 2 weeks is great. I don't have any more room in my schedule than anybody else does, but I think continuing to have a discussion is probably the way forward for all of us. We can figure out what this looks like and get a better handle on it. It's kind of my 2 cents on it at this point. There's a lot of data to be evaluated, a lot of cost projections that have to be done. And then, yeah, those that watched the last meeting, I tried to articulate the why behind a couple things, and even this in a weird way, and this survey knows structure fires right now is 0.98% of our call. And as cool as it would be to say that the east end of the county constitutes 6,000 and 9,000 individuals in the county is also incorrect. It's about over 2,000 live within that census district because you have to cut it down. That came out last meeting. I think there's a lot of information that we need to kind of vet. There's a lot of data being thrown out that are unsubstantiated or I'm not sure where they're coming from. I spent about 3 hours in the census data over the weekend because I was puzzled by where the numbers came from that last meeting. And I still can't quite figure it out after going through the census track, which is fun for those that are bored. You can do it on weekends. It's very fun. So I just think it's a good process we have to go through. We do have to vet everything because no matter what we do at the end, if we discount any one of the options, it gives somebody a pulpit to say, well, they discounted my thoughts and concerns and they just didn't want to hear it. So we have to go down all 3 paths to the end and figure out what that truly looks like and make a decision based off that. And nobody can ever come back even 10 years from now and say, well, they didn't do their due diligence. Yeah, we gave, would you like to see the data that came out? Here's the evaluation. It gives us something to stand on in the future. Because whatever we do in this situation is going to affect, the next 50 years of what we do in this community. It's not a short-term thing. This is a long-term thing. This is something that I might joke with Mike, but this is something we'll probably be complaining about over coffee as the old guys at the restaurant when they're retired, which is a good thing, right? It should be something that we're talking about at that point, but that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the future for not my generation, but for really my grandkids, if you look at it. They'll be affected by whatever this decision.
That's probably where Title 32 is ultimately the best option. I'm not against it. The only negative that I see with the Title 32 is you have potential for new board members every 2 years. And they can come in and you lose continuity there, but you work with that. Evergreen works with it. They constantly have 1 or 2 new board members that cause problems, but they work with it. It works.
Kind of like, council.
Yeah, definitely would be better than being under the county administration for sure.
All right, Andy, you've been pretty quiet. I just wanna, ask you your thoughts on this.
Well, I agree that I think a Title 32 is eventually the way it'll go, but funding is the number one priority. I think it's gonna be very interesting to see what happens with this legislation.
Yeah.
It goes to the Senate vote tomorrow. And we'll see how it fares there and then how it progresses. But I think if a Title 32 district had the authority to implement a sales tax, I think that'd be a game changer, because then you could have a combination of a mill levy and a sales tax that meets whatever the situation is. And for us, being a tourism economy, it makes sense to have a sales tax. So as part of that formula. So I think we'll know something, the legislative session will end early May, so we'll know whether it's a go or no go, and that will be a key piece of information.
Yeah.
And I think looking at a longer term, and I think it's right that it's gonna take several years to implement a Title 32. If that's the way we go, I think, let's say it passes and we can do that, at least we know the goal. And then I think it'll be an easier sell to renew the IGA as we're working towards that goal. So that's kind of the way I'd like to see it go. Now, if it doesn't pass, then we're probably back to looking at, okay, with the options we have now, what do we do? Or is it going to be reintroduced? I know there's strong support from the fire service for this bill to backfill some of the funding that's going to be lost through the property tax reduction, because they're very dependent on property tax. But I know they're also pulling out all the stops because they know it's gonna be, it won't be easy. I mean, it might make sense, but it's gonna, they're gonna have to do really push hard to make it happen.
All right, any further questions from council? I would like to thank you very, very much, both of you, for coming and giving them your time. It's important, especially, this is a real critical time. And I'm afraid we probably will be talking about this for quite some time, but it was important to get your insight.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for taking and filling all the questions.
Anytime.
Yeah, you can want to stop by the office and look at stuff, and I'm pretty available anytime to answer questions and provide information, my history and current operation that really is we don't get much credit for it. Like at that last presentation, where the ambulance was supposed to comment on the report, whether or not they wanted to do dual role, be firefighters and paramedics. It turned into look how awesome we are. The county can look how the county manages the ambulance and how awesome they are, but it really didn't focus on what that question was. And fire authority, the firefighters, the shift firefighters are very much part of the responsibility for the success of that ambulance group with those saves, because of our Lucas device that goes on those calls and initiates care on those people. So there was no credit for the fire response on that, which just sat there and bit my tongue on that one. But there's a lot going on there. Really, it's going to take some time to get through it. And they didn't provide any numbers for how they could save money. what does that look like? What are the details on it? Because I don't think there's any savings there really. For the most part, we're pretty tight with our budget, and what we get accomplished with it. Who knows what the insurance and the benefits packages and that stuff would look like, and if we would be forced to have road and bridge mechanics working on our vehicles. Just don't think that.
Yeah, because I know, the CIT recommendation was, not just have any mechanic working on your stuff, but actually have, fire equipment trained, people on your stuff.
Yeah, when we have that type of a repair needed, we go with, we were using Evergreen Fire. They have a certified guy, that's another NFPA thing. Currently, we have on staff people that are totally capable of doing air brakes and all of that type stuff. Ladder repairs, we source that back to somebody that's capable of doing that, that's certified, so. I think that one's a kind of a minor detail.
All right.
Would definitely be a cost increase.
Well, thank you, very much. I
Thank you guys
appreciate it.
both.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Appreciate your time.
Next up, Lisa, I want to thank you for taking the initiative to talk to us and really spearhead this literary initiative. And it sounds pretty exciting.
If you all will bear with me, I'm gonna take off the council hat and put on my other volunteer hat. And I actually really wanted somebody else to come and talk to you. But this is kind of, I am spearheading it. I'm also the president of the Friends of the Idaho Springs Library. If you are not familiar with our library district, Clear Creek County Library District has two main libraries, and each library has its own friends group. We're basically the cheerleaders and the fundraisers, and we support, each branch has its own level of support. And just like the fire authority is challenged with budget, so is the library district. 75% of the library district's challenges come with our staffing. And so I've been talking with our director, Libby, about how do we maybe mitigate some of that, because, we all have to be realistic about budget. And I said, why don't we start charging for our programs? And she said, absolutely not. If you are not familiar with the library's motto is basically equal access for everyone. All you need is a library card. And so the library district is extremely firm on the idea that we keep everything free. If you have a library card, you can access everything. It's not just books. You can rent their Kindles, computers, crock pots. I know Jimmy tried to give us a lead whacker, but they didn't do that for, well, I think that would have been great, but
I did.
but for insurance reasons, we couldn't.
We'll give it back then. Thanks.
Didn't they give it back?
No.
I'll find out for you.
Yeah.
But
There's
so
plenty.
I know. So we do a lot of things. And so one of the things that the Friends of the Idaho Springs Library did was said, okay, how do we do something different that will raise money? And when I look at fundraising, because I sit on city council and do other stuff, I look at how do we not only fundraise for the organization, but make it a positive, beneficial experience for the entire community. And one of the reasons that I've come to the city looking for you to be a substantial sponsor, if you read the letter, is that this is something that will benefit not only the library, because this is a fundraising project, but it will also benefit the city, because the more people we bring into town, the higher sales tax we get. We decided to run this the first week of October. I know I talked with Jonathan and Sadie about maybe the second week, but the first week works better for my board. So my board was like, can we please do it the first week? So it's after leaf peeping season. We're kind of in a slower season, and we didn't want to interfere with other aspects of what Minor Street Marketplaces or the chamber is doing. The other thing is, everything that I have done since being on the Friends board that has been author focused. We've done young author programs, and the young author program is actually expanding to 4th grade next year. So we'll be doing both 3rd and 4th grade young author program. I do adult author programs. Every talk that we've had where there is an author, we have standing room only at the library. Chuck has been there for some of that. I really think there is a hunger in our community for the arts and for things that are not just a music festival, not knocking the music festival, but just expanding what kind of festivals and things that we do. You know, and everyone that I've spoken to has been very positive about this. I have support from the chamber. We've gotten support from the school because we're gonna need volunteers like crazy. And so I really want to bring Idaho Springs, the city, into this because I think this is a positive event, not only for the library, but for the city and for the businesses. Because I also feel like when you work with businesses and you want businesses to sponsor you and give up their time and their money and their space, there has to be a positive outcome for it. So it's a positive outcome. We're gonna be bringing more people into the city. And that's it. I mean, it's all there in the letter and you know, letting me talk, and I'm happy to entertain your questions.
You know, I want to hear council's thoughts on this, but I would just like to share personally. I was invited over for the Young Authors Program, and it wasn't that I wasn't, you know, upbeat about it. I just frankly thought it'd be the kids and maybe a couple of volunteers, and I walked in and I didn't sit down because there was nowhere to sit down, and I barely found a spot to stand. I was actually really shocked. I'm thinking, like, doesn't anybody work? I mean, it was, I'm
It was
teasing
a
a little
Wednesday
bit.
morning.
It was a
like 9
Wednesday
a.m.
morning, yeah, but I mean, it was just jam packed with kids and adults. So I guess it was not prepared for that level of participation. So it was very eye-opening for me.
Well, and our focus too, we've been talking on the board, like our focus is, you know, authors without, because we want to focus on the Colorado literary scene. Our goal is to turn this into something that is an annual event, that's a fundraiser event, and also, you know, an income producing event for the community and the businesses. But we also want to focus on the Colorado author scene. There's a really rich literary scene here, and I would like to bring that together, you know, here.
How exactly are you planning for this new fundraiser? What are like the activities that are raising the funds?
The Friends of the Library is a 501c3. So any donations that come through the Friends of the Library are through to a 501c3 organization. We will be working with the businesses for sponsorships and then donations from the public.
Okay,
You're
so
also planning
business
on-
sponsorships.
Yeah.
You're planning a couple of events that would be maybe a little bit higher ticket potentially, like for.
Well, there's no ticket cost for and it would be 2 days, 2 full days of author readings, author panels, author discussions, where people move throughout the town. So there's a space at the Frothy Cup, there's a space at the, there's a space at Mountain Prime. The United Center has held open their space for us that weekend so that we could do author panels. And we're looking to do nonfiction, fiction, and poetry. So there's gonna be a wide range. It's not just, all romance or all sci-fi or whatever. It's a wide range of literacy.
Were you still planning on having an event at the beginning or something?
Yes, I would like to do a paid cocktail event on Thursday. We've had some discussions about Friday and Saturday night events that would also be paid events that are donation based and fundraising based. But that, other than the cocktail party, that is not set in stone yet.
Do you have an idea yet about so business sponsorships pay for the event to happen, so then you need to make money on top of that? Like, do you have any projections or ideas about how much this might raise for the library?
My goal is 25,000. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it is actually a lot for an inaugural event. I have 2,000 committed right now. And I've just put in for a grant with the Clear Creek Center for Arts and Education. Apparently it's on their website. I didn't see that yet, but somebody told me that, so I was like, hopefully that's a good sign. But so my goal is to raise money from the community, but also to raise money from people that are coming with donation boxes. Because when we do things with Friends of the Library, what we notice is that if you have a donation box out, people do tend to donate because the event is free. And because the library believes really strongly in access to all, for all, we don't want to charge, except for some of these, evening events. Come on, I can bring more. And if you hate it, that's okay too. Like, this is still gonna happen. I feel like I want the city to be an integral part of this.
Oh my gosh, I love the idea. I think it benefits the city, and I just hope it meets your goals too. I just know from running fundraising events, right? It costs money to do them all, so then you have to see how much you actually make at the end of
You're exactly
the
right.
day.
Well, no, and the big expenses that we're gonna have is advertising,
Mhm.
and also staffing. You know, so I'm working on bringing up, like, the high school volunteers are a huge part for me. Thankfully, they all need 40 hours starting next year for the 2025 graduates. Yeah, like, the graduates this year only need 20, graduates next year need 40. If you can knock out 15 hours in one weekend, that's a juicy piece of volunteering.
Chamber's committed to volunteering and
Yes.
helping with this event, making sure it's successful.
That's what I was just
Also,
going to say, the chamber, like, I'm working with Jonathan and Sadie, and I feel like, you know, if you're working with the businesses, both of them have really great ties and great working relationships with the business, so that's a huge piece.
How will you be reaching out to the prospective people that would be attending this, and do you have an idea of how many people will be attending by RSVP?
That I don't know, like, I would like to say it's gonna be packed, there's gonna be no parking all weekend long, but I don't know, because when you start events, when inaugural events, sometimes are slow to take off. But, one of the reasons that I'm working on funding now is that I would like to start advertising in the summer, starting with the Clear Creek Courant, and I know that people are like, that's just a local paper, but everybody in this community reads that. And then working out towards advertising in Denver, advertising in Colorado Springs, and securing my authors so that my authors are also doing some of their advertising, because authors also do, like, when
They're
they're
gonna
going.
bring it following, right?
Well, it is, even if they don't bring a following, so a really good example of this, in 2019, Denver Pop Culture Con, I don't know if anyone went to that. It was before Denver Pop Culture Con had to sell to Fan Expo because the pandemic bankrupted them. But Denver Pop Culture Con brought in, like, Jason Momoa and Val Kilmer, you know, a lot of the big stars. And in 2019, the guy that ran it said, I really want to bump up Author Alley. And he did not only did he bump up Author Alley, but he did a whole series called Romance Comes to Popularity. When they got the surveys back, more people came to see the authors, most of whom were mid-list authors. More people came to see the authors than they did come to see the stars. You know, and I have met people that only came because the author piece of this was so bumped up. I think there's a really, you know, a hunger for this. So that's how I plan to go about the advertising. But first I need to secure that, you know, the city and the businesses are behind me, and then I can get the authors and start working in that way.
Well, sometimes the city takes chances and we see how it works out. I'll give you a great example of this. The bluegrass.
Rapid grass?
Thank you, rapid grass was escaping me. You know, the first time we sponsored it, it was a bit of a crapshoot. Were we gonna have an underwhelming response? Well, it turns out we had a very overwhelming response. And I don't think anyone feels, I mean, even if you're not a bluegrass fan, that was not money well spent. Every year, I think that absolutely pays a dividend to the city, not only an increased sales tax, but there's things that happen throughout the year where you have that goodwill and people think that Idaho Springs is a cool place to go and I'd like to come back. You know, so it keeps people, you know, engaged in our community. But we had to try it, you know, the first time and gauge, you know, how that was going. So it's just a suggestion that we look at this the first year and we weigh it. We see, hey, was it an overwhelming response, underwhelming, you know, and we can decide if it's in the city's best interest to, you know, continue making an annual kind of
Well, and the
thing.
Friends of the Library has the same point of view, because one of the reasons that we came up with this is because we're looking at different ways of bringing in funds that don't just involve, okay, let's go put a mill levy out there, because we're having the same conversations that the fire authority is people are tired. People are tired of seeing increases that come to them through their ballots. So we thought, okay, how can we do something that's a much larger scale and, you know, potentially can bring in a much greater return on investment and help out the library? Because our goal is to keep our staff at where it is and keep our programming, because if we don't have the staff and we can't pay the staff, we can't do a lot of programming. Like, I talked to Libby about that and she said, I can do this budget. Like, if I have the smaller budget, I can do it, but it's going to look very different. And I think that our library, particularly our library, is a pretty amazing piece of the community. So that's what brought this on.
And the way the city should look at it is, if this is a hit and it does bring people to town, then it brings sales tax into the town. It brings recognition into this town.
And Lisa, important question. Does the money that's raised stay in the Friends of the Idaho Springs?
Yes, so the Friends of the Idaho Springs Library directly supports the Idaho Springs Library. Our goal with this is programming and our scholarship and helping the library. Like the programming and our scholarship, because we also do scholarship money every year, and that's actually a Clear Creek County Library District scholarship, but both of the Friends groups contribute to that. And our scholarship funds get a little low. And I was like, oh my God, you know, kids in this community depend on that. We award that every year. So yes, it stays within the Idaho Springs Library. Everything that we do goes to the Idaho Springs Library. And if you look at our programming, you know, both libraries do it, but we have programming, regular programming all the time. That's just at the Idaho Springs. They just did an Egypt night up in Georgetown this weekend at the Hotel de Paris. That was the Clear Creek County
I went
Library
to that.
District. Did you go to it?
Yeah.
Was it fun?
Yeah, it was pretty
The drinks looked really good too, because Sweet Easy makes like great drinks. But that didn't cost anything. It was, you know, so it was an evening with a speaker and beverages that the library paid for. You know, and that's the kind of thing that we want to continue to support.
Okay, so I have a question. I'm going to try to gauge the sentiment here. So I'm gonna ask everybody, but you,
You want me to
Lisa,
step out? I'll step out.
you don't need to
No,
step
I
out.
don't.
No, you're fine. It's just that we know that obviously you're.
Oh, no,
for
if we vote for this, I will excuse myself.
Well,
That's fine.
there isn't, I don't think there's a vote necessary tonight. But because we still have to arrive at what financial level. But I'm talking about the idea of the city funding this, at least for the first year, or doing some type of funding, I should say. Jeremy, what do you think?
It's a good idea.
Scott?
Yeah.
Jimmy?
We're not talking about.
Sure, insurance needs, sure.
Okay.
How do we,
Janine? Okay, all right.
how do
So-
we determine the amount that you're?
Well, that's a good
Do you
question.
have any like business sponsorship things, like different
I'm still,
levels?
so I would like to, if you would give me like another week or so, I'm still working on that with my board about how we're doing our sponsorship levels.
Mhm.
But yes, we do have some, but they're not firmed up just yet.
Okay, all right, and that makes perfect sense, because we have seen with obviously other nonprofits, different funding levels, so. Well, thank you, and we actually have several minutes to spare.
Yes,
And
thank you
I-
all very
I-
much.
I have a feeling this will be a relatively quick regular meeting at 7, so let's everybody take a comfort break and we'll convene at our regular meeting at 7 p.m.
So they were trying to fix themselves, yeah. I want to see
Good
people
for them.
are.
I told them, I appreciate it. That they were, you know, What else?
But the biggest thing is going to be advertising.
Yeah, people there.
I know. That went very well.
Oh, so thank you
That's so
very much.
picturesque. Kind of what's in there.
Step back. That's why they didn't want to be. They didn't want everything to start going away. Change all the design. So the non-emergency number. Used to go in that area.
You're all about that.
I gave her my number. I gave her Ed's number.
Oh, my goodness. I love this shirt. I know it's ridiculous.
That's a valid way to do it.
Yeah, because you got the change.
Yeah.
They have to do 40 buildings. If there was a parking
Well,
lot,
you know, I know my
or
sister-
cable has power motor.
I feel like it's-
Second address. Power.
And the one person.
You don't really know, or like, I don't know if they have a bill.
Anticipate a huge.
No, they're like, oh, she's a-
Discussions tomorrow, that nature.
So
One point they have.
No, but you know what's funny, I talked to a lot of people that watch, like, just, like, watch the link, and so they're not logged in or anything, they're just watching. You know, so I think people do pay attention. People are starting to. But I run into every town, like, hey, I saw that.
Sorry, we should get out there, but.
That'd be cool. Insane, man. I mean, because they have like
All these fires.
West
Central Fire. Huge fire. Weaver, Cheney, Nevada. Lakewood, and these are. Like 600-700 copies.
Way more.
They do, no.
Well, I got the first monthly report for March. Because we had finished the full month. We went down.
Plug in, or you waiting for me?
So I got the first report for March. And it gave it. Short, but so here's that. So these are calls for service. So the sheriff's department.
Yeah, absolutely. Long Diane likes me. Yeah.
One of those two.
Where's this place, this Vietnamese?
The old,
What do you like to get there?
It's gonna go in the, I think, well, I get to see combo.
Is it in the bowl or,
Rice.
But like.
One of my 5,000. 5,000.
One that moved.
I grew up there.
Well,
I don't want that either.
No, not the phone. The one that's in downtown. Just up by you. You turn where.
On the hill? Yeah. I thought it was Vietnamese and Chinese. Got Chinese.
Oh, was it? I was kind of
Has a
nervous.
piano in there?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Let me find out for you.
Oh, yeah. Probably good. I like eating these Chinese and all that.
Oh, yeah, I love all these.
Sometimes I don't know what stuff is.
Oh, well, sometimes I don't know what stuff is even.
Yeah.
Well, there's actually a cabinet around it.
I read that part.
Oh, there you go.
Like, it's getting super cold out.
Is it always closed? Water rights raised separately.
We're not done. It's been beautiful. We're not done.
Yeah, no fair.
No, we gotta get through this one. I'm not putting my plants out, I'm not doing any of my stuff. It always gets snow.
That's the only, seriously, we have like a whole month of wind.
Well, but
That's crazy
also.
wind, never.
Mayor,
we're back.
Thank you. We had left off, with, a first and a second on approval of bills, and I just wanted to ensure, that we don't have any further questions of the bills.
None for me.
All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Jeremy Jones.
Yes.
Janine Mariani.
Yes.
Kate Collier. Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes. And, do we have any public comment tonight, either, on this sheet or online?
Not online.
Okay. Well, we only have one resolution tonight. And I would like to entertain a motion.
Right, so you got this.
I'll move to approve resolution number 7, series 2024, a resolution approving a contract to buy and sell real estate for a certain property within Clear Creek County, Colorado, adjacent to the Idaho Springs Reservoir known as Middle Lot Chicago Creek Road.
Thank you, Lisa. Do I have a second? Second, from Jeremy, thank you. And as I would like to lead off the discussion, just pointing out that the $15,000 that's Land Title Company is a deposit on the $510,000 purchase price that council had previously authorized us to go to. So I just wanted to say, the good news is that we were able to secure nearly 51, it's actually 50.8 acres that's on the west side of our reservoir. And that should council for any reason have, decided not to do that, we just simply would not have issued the check. So that's why that was in the bills. And I'd like to know, is there any further questions or discussions about that property?
I'm really pleased about this. I'm really pleased.
On the contract says acceptance deadline, so that escrow was made with the acceptance.
I'm sorry, they don't have the earnest money yet.
Okay, well, acceptance deadline date,
4/12.
4/12.
Right, well, I mean, obviously, that's contract acceptance, but
Oh, okay.
we still have title work to go. Should be a pretty easy closing as there's no financing involved. This will come out of our water enterprise as it should. And I'm glad, I think all of us are very pleased with this. It probably, frankly, is going to pay dividends for perhaps, future councils, future mayors. I don't know that we move to expand the reservoir right now, but I'm just saying, I think it's important that we secured this property because we may not have this opportunity for literally generations. I think expansion is doable, and it only becomes a larger crisis as time goes on, particularly for downstream users. And I would just suggest, not to editorialize, but when you look at all of the development that's been approved downstream, if all of that actually gets built, heaven help us, because I'm saying this state is in some serious trouble as far as providing water and all those new doors. Anything further? Hearing no further comments, roll call please.
Mayor Pro Tem Jeremy Jones,
Yes.
Janine Mariani,
Yes.
Kate Collier, Lisa Manifold,
Yes.
Jim Clark,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes. I don't have anything under mayor and council, and I would just like to check with staff before I go to council staff. Anything further tonight?
I don't think so.
Okay, council, anything further before we adjourn? Yes.
Do we have an ETA or a deadline or any kind of update on when we're supposed to be getting the towers for the new water meters?
Oh,
I can talk a little bit about
That'd
that.
be awesome.
So it's a 6 to 8 month process to build the towers. And then I have been looking at some grant opportunities to try to see if we can subsidize all or part of that cost. We do probably need to have another work session to discuss those towers and how we want to proceed. We have 2 propagation studies that have now been done. I think, oh, I might be wrong, but one's like 93% and one's like 90 high percent.
It was 93 and one was 95, and that was the difference of 1 and 2.
Yeah, so we think it's gonna revolutionize our system basically. So we can do one at a time, or we could put them all in and just get it done. They had told us our system was designed for 50 units and we're using it on over 1,000. So it's something that is probably a good thing for us long term. But we'll hear pretty soon from them when they'll come in. I think we're expecting August is kind of the timeline. And so we still have a couple opportunities to look for some grant funds and stuff like that too.
Lisa, good question. I was wondering that myself.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Anything further before we adjourn? I just
Oh my God.
want to point out that we do have another work session and regular meeting in a week on the 22nd. Just to go around, Chief, you don't have anything further tonight, do you? Okay. Paul, Ed, anything further? All right.
At this time, thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody.